Welcome, everyone. Today we're diving into one of the most profound and influential books ever written, the book of Genesis from the Bible. Known as the first book in both the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Old Testament, Genesis introduces the origins of the world, humanity, and the unfolding of divine purpose. Its powerful themes of creation, faith, and human frailty have shaped religious thought, art, literature, and ethics for millennia. So let's take a journey through Genesis, exploring its key stories, lessons, and mysteries. Let's journey way back long before the Bible, before civilization as we know it. Humans were already telling stories about how the world began. But these aren't tales of peaceful gardens or carefully orchestrated creations. These are raw, untamed, and teeming with chaos. Archaeologists and anthropologists have uncovered fragments of myths that stretch back an astonishing 140,000 years. Buried deep in time, they echo the fears and hopes of ancient humanity. Here's what's crucial to understand. The book of Genesis didn't emerge from a vacuum. It's a product of its time, a time when creation myths were already thousands of years old. But those early myths, they weren't about a perfect, orderly world crafted in 6 neat days. No, they spoke of survival, struggle, and forces lying just beneath the surface of existence. The oldest myths don't start with a benevolent creator saying, "Let there be light." They begin with darkness, swirling chaos, primordial waters, and monsters lurking in the deep. This isn't the sanitized version heard on Sunday mornings. In these stories, creation isn't a birth, it's a battle. Cosmic forces collide, gods fight and die, and the world emerges not out of peace, but from the ashes of conflict. Take, for example, the ancient myths of African and Australian Aboriginal cultures. They speak of ancestral beings rising from the depths, battling monstrous entities to bring order from chaos. In those stories, the world wasn't handed over, it was seized, taken from the jaws of chaos. Sound familiar? Even the book of Genesis hints at those deep waters of chaos in its opening lines. The earth was formless and void. But what was this void? An echo, perhaps, of the ancient chaos that early cultures believed was barely kept at bay. Let's look to Mesopotamia, where the Enuma Elish, written centuries before Genesis, tells of a universe born from the violent clash of gods. The god Marduk battles the primordial sea dragon, Tiamat, splitting her body to create the heavens and the earth. A darker, more brutal prelude to Genesis, don't you think? Here's the intriguing part. The Genesis story isn't just one culture's view of creation. It's how they chose to tell it, taking those terrifying, chaotic myths and reworking them into something more orderly, more controlled, and frankly, more comforting. What if Genesis isn't the beginning of the story, but a refinement, a conscious decision to reshape ancient myths into something that fit a monotheistic vision? These ancient myths tell a darker, wilder story about the birth of the universe, a time when creation was a clash of blood and struggle, not peace and light. The echoes of that chaos live on in Genesis, hidden in plain sight. Look closely, and you can see the cracks in its polished surface, revealing glimpses of a shadowy past that the ancient writers could never fully conceal. In Genesis, a single, powerful male god commands creation into existence. But that's not the whole story. Long before Genesis, ancient cultures worshipped earth mothers and powerful female deities who played a central role in creation. These goddesses weren't secondary figures. They were life itself, embodying fertility, the cycles of nature, and the essence of existence. By the time Genesis was written, however, these goddesses had been pushed to the edges, replaced by a single god who allowed no rivals. In ancient, pre-biblical traditions, female deities weren't just symbols of fertility, they ruled the cosmos. In Mesopotamia, for instance, the goddess Inanna held dominion over life and death, guiding the seasons and the fate of humanity. In Egyptian mythology, Isis stood as a symbol of wisdom, magic, and rebirth. These goddesses were once powerful creators of life and rulers of death. Genesis may have refined these stories, but traces of the ancient, awe-inspiring power of these goddesses remain, faint yet persistent, within the text. A creator goddess who resurrected her dead husband, Osiris, and breathed life into their son, Horus, a goddess of magic and wisdom, whose influence spanned from the heavens to the underworld. In ancient Canaan, the very neighbors of the early Israelites worshipped Asherah, a goddess often linked with Yahweh himself. In some traditions, she was viewed as his consort, the feminine counterpart to his masculine force. Her symbols, wooden poles called Asherah, stood proudly alongside altars to Yahweh in Israelite sanctuaries until they were systematically erased, cut down, and demonized as the Hebrews embraced a stricter form of monotheism. Genesis doesn't just tell a different story, it actively erases the competition. It shifts from a world where creation was a partnership often led by powerful female deities to one dominated by a single male voice. The earth mothers and goddesses who once held sway were systematically pushed out of the narrative, their power diminished, and their roles obscured. Even the language of Genesis hints at what's missing. The Hebrew term for the Spirit of God, Ruach Elohim, is feminine. Yet, throughout the text, this spirit is never attributed with the nurturing, life-giving qualities traditionally associated with femininity. This omission speaks volumes about the transformation of the narrative, a shift from a world rich with female influence to one that embraces a singular, patriarchal vision of creation. Any creative power tied to the feminine aspect is subtly present in Genesis, yet muted, a relic of an older time when creation wasn't solely the domain of a male deity. This shift wasn't just a theological change, it was about control. By centralizing power in the hands of one male god, Genesis took a decisive step away from the chaotic, unpredictable forces represented by the Earth Mothers. The world transformed from a vibrant tapestry of cycles, birth and rebirth, guided by feminine hands, into a realm ruled by a single, unchallenged authority. This God created and controlled with precise commands, leaving no room for ambiguity or dissent. It's no coincidence that Genesis includes tales of temptation and disobedience linked to female figures like Eve. These narratives serve as a stark reminder of what had to be overcome, the wildness, the independence, the chaos of the feminine that needed to be subdued to establish a monotheistic order. The goddesses of old didn't simply vanish. They were rewritten, repurposed, and ultimately silenced. What remains in Genesis is a polished narrative that champions the dominance of a single god. But beneath the surface lies a hidden story, a tale of the powerful feminine presence that once shaped creation but now whispers from the shadows of forgotten history. The rise of the divine feminine has often been met with suppression and eventual erasure. Creation wasn't always a solitary act. It was a partnership, a dance of opposing forces that Genesis ultimately sought to conclude. The ancient goddesses weren't weak or irrelevant. They were powerful enough to be seen as threats, which is why they had to be erased. Their roles were stripped away, their influence buried in the sands of time. The Genesis account of Adam and Eve paints a picture that feels clean, structured, and almost comfortable. But when you delve into the stories of the first humans from other ancient traditions, a darker picture begins to emerge. These aren't tales of serene gardens and divine breath. They are gritty, violent, and steeped in the brutal realities of life and death. Let's explore how humanity truly began. According to some of the oldest myths, the creation of humankind wasn't an act of divine grace. It was a raw, often bloody process. Some cultures tell of humans emerging from the bones of giants or being crafted from the earth, mixed with the blood of slain gods. It's a far cry from the polished notion of being sculpted in divine perfection. This deeper exploration reveals a more complex and tumultuous origin story, one that acknowledges the chaos and struggle that accompanied the birth of humanity. The divine image isn't just about perfection. It's about being forged from chaos and the remnants of what came before. Take the mythologies of the ancient Sumerians, for instance. Humans were created not out of love or curiosity, but to serve as laborers, essentially, to relieve the gods of their burdens. The gods mixed their divine blood with clay to form the first humans in a raw and brutal act that has little to do with innocence. These earliest humans were marked by conflict and violence, struggling to find purpose in a world where they were born to serve. This notion isn't unique to Sumerian mythology. Across ancient cultures, from the oldest African stories to the myths of Central Asia, the first humans are often tied to themes of blood, soil, and sacrifice. These narratives center around power, survival, and the harsh realities of an unforgiving world, standing in stark contrast to the tranquility of Eden. While the Genesis narrative presents humanity as beginning in a state of innocence, a closer examination of these pre-biblical myths reveals that innocence was never part of the equation. The early stories make it clear humanity's origins are steeped in blood and the remnants of past battles among the divine. This complex tapestry of creation reflects the tumultuous journey of existence, one that acknowledges the struggle for meaning and identity in a world fraught with chaos. In these older narratives, we see ourselves as inheritors of chaos, not order. This brings us to the intriguing question of the divine image in Genesis. Humans are said to be made in God's likeness, but what does that really mean when we consider the myths that came before? In many traditions, the first humans are reflections of their creators, not morally upright beings, but flawed and even dangerous entities capable of rebellion, violence, and greed. These darker aspects weren't seen as mistakes. They were integral to the design, a reminder that humanity was born out of chaos and conflict, not harmony. Now let's talk about the story of the Great Flood in Genesis. We all know the basics: Noah, the ark, the animals marching 2 by 2. But if we step back for a moment, we have to ask, why is this story so prevalent across cultures long before Genesis was even written? It's not just a biblical tale. Echoes of this narrative can be found in nearly every corner of the ancient world. Take the ancient Mesopotamian epic of Atrahasis, which predates the Genesis account. In this version, the gods decide to wipe out humanity not out of disappointment or sorrow, but because humanity's noise and chaos had become unbearable. This common thread of a devastating flood sent by divine forces raises questions about our origins and the turbulent relationship between humanity and the divine, a reminder that our stories are woven from the fabric of chaos and struggle. The flood wasn't a last resort to save a remnant of righteousness. It was a cold, calculated act of destruction. Humanity was viewed as an inconvenience, a mistake that needed correcting, not a species worth preserving. In these older myths, the gods aren't merciful judges. They're tyrants wielding the floodwaters as a weapon, indifferent to the casualties they cause. In Hindu and Chinese traditions, the flood isn't framed as a moral lesson. Instead, it reflects cosmic cycles of destruction and renewal, necessary acts to maintain the universe's balance, even if that means obliterating entire civilizations. The Genesis narrative softens this brutality, portraying God as regretful and sorrowful over the decision to flood the earth. Yet in doing so, it obscures a deeper, older truth that other cultures embraced. The flood was a divine act of power, a reset button that left the world stained with death and destruction. What's even more intriguing is how these ancient flood stories often feature chosen survivors, whether it's Atrahasis, Utnapishtim, or Noah. But what Genesis glosses over is that this choice wasn't always about moral superiority. The survivors weren't selected for their righteousness. Their selection raises questions about fate, divine whim, and the unpredictable nature of existence itself. The deeper implications of these narratives challenge our understanding of morality and the true nature of divine intervention in the world. In older traditions, those who survived did so not because of moral purity, but due to their cunning, strategic alliances or their ability to appease wrathful deities with sacrifice and submission. Survival was less about righteousness and more about being in the right place at the right time or having the right connections with the gods. And let's not overlook the aftermath. In Genesis, Noah emerges from the ark to a covenant, a promise from God sealed with a rainbow. It's a hopeful image, symbolizing a fresh start. But other flood stories paint a much darker picture. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the survivors return to a devastated, unpredictable world, left questioning the gods' motives and value of human life. The world they face isn't renewed. It's broken, scarred by divine violence that could erupt again at any moment. The Genesis narrative is often viewed as a tale of order emerging from chaos, where God speaks the universe into being with calm authority. However, there's another side to creation myths, one that Genesis glosses over, a side steeped in violence, brutality, and cosmic struggle. The Enuma Elish from ancient Babylon gives us a glimpse into a world where the gods fought vicious battles to create order from chaos, revealing that creation is often a tumultuous process rather than a serene unfolding. This complexity challenges our understanding of divinity and the very essence of existence, reminding us that the roots of our stories are intertwined with struggle and conflict. Creation wasn't a tranquil moment, it was a conquest. Marduk, the hero god, faces off against the monstrous chaos dragon Tiamat in a savage battle, splitting her body to form the heavens and the earth. This universe is literally born from the corpse of a slain enemy. Here, creation emerges not as a birth, but as an act of violence. What if the Genesis narrative is merely an echo of these primal conflicts, edited, sanitized, and smoothed over to erase the memory of its darker origins? There are traces, hints, and whispers within the text itself. Genesis opens with the Spirit of God hovering over the deep, an abyss that's never fully explained, a shadowy remnant of something older, something chaotic. This deep has been interpreted as Tiam, a term that strikingly resembles Tiamat, the chaos entity defeated in Babylonian myth. But the most chilling echoes come from Canaanite mythology, where creation stories are drenched in blood and brutality. The god Baal battles the sea monster Yam, shattering the forces of chaos to establish his rule. Creation was not a gentle process. It was a cosmic battlefield where gods clashed in fierce struggles for supremacy. These narratives challenge the notion of a serene, orderly creation and remind us that the origins of our universe are steeped in conflict and violence. Killed, died, and resurrected, the gods shaped the earth with their triumphs and defeats. When you dive into these older stories, a striking pattern emerges. The universe wasn't simply gifted into existence, it was wrested from the jaws of chaos. The biblical writers were undoubtedly aware of these tales. They lived in a world steeped in them, surrounded by cultures that shared the same ancient fears of chaotic forces threatening order. Yet when they set out to write Genesis, they took those wild, violent myths and transformed them into something cleaner, more controlled, and more palatable for a developing monotheistic faith. However, the echoes of that ancient darkness remain, barely hidden beneath the surface. The Genesis story isn't entirely innocent of brutality. It begins with a world enveloped in formlessness and void, a chaos tamed only by divine command. What lies beneath the polished narrative of a garden and a fall is a legacy of conflict and domination, a reminder that the origins of our world are far from serene. So, what was erased in the final edit of Genesis? It's clear that the writers faced a choice: to preserve the ancient bloody battles of gods and monsters, or to reshape them into a narrative that reflects a more orderly, monotheistic worldview. The decision to sanitize these primal struggles leaves us questioning what truths lie hidden beneath the surface of the familiar creation story. They chose to recast the narrative into one where a single, all-powerful deity speaks creation into existence, leaving the scars of older stories hidden in the corners of the text. Genesis presents a clear image of a singular God, Yahweh alone, unrivaled, and omnipotent. But the truth is, Yahweh didn't emerge in a vacuum. He wasn't always the solitary figure we see in Genesis. Long before the Hebrew Bible took shape, Yahweh was one among many in a bustling pantheon of ancient gods. What's fascinating is how this once minor deity rose to prominence, ultimately becoming the singular God of monotheism. Yahweh's origins are murky, yet evidence points to connections with early Canaanite and even pre-Canaanite religious traditions. In ancient texts, Yahweh is portrayed as a storm god, a deity associated with thunder, lightning, and the raw power of the skies. This depiction closely aligns with Baal, a Canaanite god known for wielding lightning as a weapon and revered for his control over nature. It's clear that Yahweh was once part of a chaotic, pluralistic world, a deity among deities vying for worship and recognition. Welcome to Blessovia Science TV, where we take you on an exhilarating journey through the cosmos and unravel the mysteries of science. We are excited to offer you the opportunity to become a valued member of our ever-growing community of cosmic enthusiasts and knowledge seekers. Exclusive access to cosmic content. As a member of Blessovia Science TV, you will gain exclusive access to a treasure trove of cosmic content, including documentaries, interviews with leading scientists, space missions updates, and awe-inspiring visualizations of the universe, live Q, and sessions with experts. Your membership will grant you the chance to participate in live Q and sessions with renowned scientists, astronomers, and space explorers. Get your burning questions answered by those who push the boundaries of human knowledge. Embark on a journey that spans the cosmos and join us in unraveling the secrets of the universe. Become a Blessovia Science TV member today, and together we will reach for the stars. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, and share. Don't forget to leave your comment.